Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Bank Shot Breakdown. We're going to go over 4 college basketball games for Friday, February 17th, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your college basketball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, you can always find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for Friday in college basketball. First up, we go to the Mountain West as Air Force takes on Wyoming. This one's going to be 10 o'clock Eastern. It's going to be on Fox Sports 1. Wyoming had a lot of expectations going into this season because they made the NCAA tournament last year, and although they were a one-and-done as the 12th seed, they still brought back a good amount of players from last year's roster. Going into the season, they were 38th in Division I experience, and they had a pretty deep team, but now you look at the team and you look at their schedule, they played a lot of underperformances early on in non-conference play, and then a lot of injuries that this team has suffered really from start to now of the season, and now there's only 7 remaining scholarship players on the roster for Wyoming, but that didn't matter in their last game as they went into the pit, one of the toughest places to play in college basketball, certainly one of the toughest places in the Mountain West, and they went in as a double-digit underdog and won the game outright by double digits, 70-56 the final score. Had a great shooting performance from Wyoming in that game, and overall they just played the better basketball, and I think they're going to carry some momentum from that win into this game back at home against an Air Force team that they think they can certainly beat. Air Force beat Wyoming in the first matchup, but when you look at that game, a lot of key pieces for Wyoming were out for that one. Guys like Hunter Maldonado, Hunter Thompson, Brendan Wenzel as well. All 3 guys are back in the lineup, and they played last game against New Mexico, so I do think Wyoming is going to get a big boost from that, and I do think Wyoming is the better team, shot quality-wise as well. You look at the fundamentals, Wyoming 53rd in the country in defensive rebounding percentage. That's really, I think Air Force is going to struggle to get those second chance opportunities. They're 341st in the country in offensive rebounding, so they're going to be held to 1 shot per trip. And although that we've seen some games where Air Force has had good shooting nights, I just don't think we can trust it on the road where they just haven't played too well. Their last road win was back on January 14th, so over a month ago. I think that the Wyoming's going to win this game, and we're laying a pretty reasonable number because of their record, because they're 8-17 overall. I think this team is a lot better than 8-17, and even with their injuries, I think the Cowboys take this one. So give me the Wyoming Cowboys. I'm going to lay the points. Next up, we go to the Ivy League as Harvard takes on Columbia. This one's going to be 7 o'clock Eastern. It's going to be on ESPN+. Now, because Harvard's on a 4-game losing streak, I think we're getting a pretty good number here with the Crimson on the road here against Columbia. As Columbia, although they played a lot more competitive basketball on their home court in conference play and even out of conference play this season, I still think they're not good enough in this spot at home against Harvard, a team that already beat Columbia by 22 points in the first meeting, 73-51. Columbia's defense really starting to struggle. We've seen a lot of games as of late, most of those on the road, granted, but still games nonetheless in the conference where they've given up more than 80 points. They give up 99 points to Yale, 88 points to Princeton, 83 to Dartmouth of all teams, 97 to Brown, and even at home against Cornell giving up 102 points. Harvard's not an offensive juggernaut, that's for sure, but their defense is certainly going to be their best offense in this game, forcing turnovers, holding Columbia to 1 shot per trip, not really sending them to the free throw line, getting plenty of chances on the other end. And Harvard's a good offensive rebounding team. They get to the free throw line themselves. Columbia's defense, I think, is going to struggle in this matchup. They're not a very good defensive rebounding team, one of the worst in the conference. So even if Harvard does not have a great shooting performance like we saw in the first matchup between these two, I still think they're going to be able to get the job done by double digits in this game. In the first matchup, we saw Harvard have a 14-7 offensive rebound advantage in that game, and they shot 55% from 2-point range, so really attacking a weak Columbia defense. I'm going to take Harvard here. I'm going to lay the points on the road. Next up, we talk about our familiar friends of Canisius. The Golden Griffins are back on the Bank Shot Breakdown as they take on Rider, and this one's going to be 7 o'clock Eastern. It's going to be on ESPN+. Now, Rider's on a nice 8-game win streak in conference play, and they've had some nice wins along the way. They took down Iona on the road back on January 15th. They beat Marist on the road by 16 points, beat Fairfield in overtime away from home as well. But I do think Rider is a little bit overvalued, and we saw that in their last game against Fairfield. They were pretty big favorites in that game at home, and they were not able to cover the number. We took Fairfield not only on the Bank Shot Breakdown, that was the Bank Shot best bet as well, and Fairfield had a pretty good chance of winning that game outright. They had a lead, I think, with 30 seconds to go. They lost that lead at the end and then couldn't find the victory, but Ryder I still think is overvalued in this spot. I think the one big advantage that Ryder has in this game is their offensive rebounding ability. They're 23rd in the country in offensive rebounding percentage, while Canisius has struggled on the defensive glass at times this season. But other than that, I think Canisius, shot quality-wise, is the better team. I think Canisius is a pretty fundamentally sound team as well. They take care of the basketball. They force a good amount of turnovers. Now, we saw these teams play really early on in conference play back on December 31st. It was a semi-home game for Canisius because their stadium was getting renovations done, so they were not able to play on their home court for the first few conference games. But even still, in a kind of a weird spot for Canisius, they were able to lose only by 2 points, 66-64. A very competitive game in that one, and that was with Canisius shooting a miserable 1 of 8 from the free throw line, 12.5% as a team. But in that game, it was only a 14-10 offensive rebound advantage for Ryder, so Canisius held their ground there. They forced 15 turnovers, only had 7 turnovers themselves, so it was a competitive game. I think we see another competitive one in this game, so give me Canisius. I'm going to take the points. Next up, we go to the WAC as Abilene Christian takes on Grand Canyon. This one, 11 o'clock Eastern. It's going to be on ESPNU. It should be a great game. It's nice to see these teams get a TV game in the WAC conference, a conference and teams that we've talked a lot about this season on the Bank Shot Breakdown. Abilene Christian at the beginning of WAC play was struggling. They were 1-5 at the beginning of the schedule and conference schedule, and their only win was against Tarleton at home. But now, as of late, they've been a lot more competitive. They have some nice wins. They've scored plenty of points. Their last 4 games, they're 3-1 straight up, and those 3 wins, they scored 80-plus points in those games against some tough defenses in the conference. And this is going to be a tough matchup on the road against a Grand Canyon team that they've yet to beat in conference play. They lost the first game in the first meeting this season. They lost the only meeting last year in the regular season. But I look back at that game. It was not too long ago, back on January 26th. It was a 2-point win for Grand Canyon. We actually took GCU in that game because just didn't like the matchup for ACU at the time. But Grand Canyon, they only won that game by 2 points despite shooting 8 of 17, 47.1% from three-point range. And Abilene Christian, they shot 33%, not too shabby. But at the free throw line, Abilene Christian was a miserable 9 of 17, 52.9%. Abilene Christian is not an amazing free throw shooting team, but they shoot about 72% on the season, so we should see big improvements there. And ACU is one of the best three-point shooting teams in the conference, so also room for improvement in that facet. Grand Canyon on the other side is not going to be able to shoot 47% consistently against this ACU defense, even though the perimeter defense has been hit or miss this year. ACU forces a lot of turnovers. That bodes well against a Grand Canyon team that turns the ball over quite a bit offensively. They also don't force many turnovers themselves. I think ACU's offense is going to show up in this game. I think their defense is also going to allow them to get a lot of fast break opportunities. I think ACU scores into the 80s in this game, and I like the Wildcats to at least cover. I think I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on the money line as well. Give me Abilene Christian plus the points. And that's it. Those are the games for Friday in college hoops. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to put your college basketball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.